Welcome to Mindset Matters, the official podcast of Oregon Realtors. In this podcast, we dive deep into the secrets of top-performing agents, market trends, strategies, tips, and tricks that will transform and elevate your real estate career to new heights. Follow or subscribe today, and stay tuned for a podcast that's not just about real estate. It's about mastering the mindset for success. Good morning, listeners. Welcome to Mindset Matters podcast. This morning, we have Brent Landels with us to talk about the new construction niche market. Brent is a fifth-generation Oregonian. He began his real estate career as a sales assistant in 1989 and worked his way up to division president for a Northwest regional builder. Along the way, he has been responsible for the sale and/or construction of over 1,500 homes. At various times, Brent was involved in everything from product design, sales, and marketing to training salespeople, customer service, and neighborhood management. In 2005, Brent and his family moved to Bend, Oregon. Since Brent has been in Bend and through 2008-2012, he's expanded his career from to include resale market with his new construction business. He has served on numerous committees at the local level, including board of directors, government affairs, executive committee, and he is currently immediate past president for the Central Oregon Association of Realtors. It's a lot, Brent. You've done a lot. At the state level, Brent has served as a state director, as an RPAC trustee, and on the Government Affairs Key Committee. At the national level, he's a campaign services trustee and currently serves on issues mobilization. Currently, Brent is President-Elect for the Oregon Realtors and will serve as state president in 2025. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you today. So tell us a little bit about your career in the new home construction market. I'm guessing you didn't start there, but you've ended up there. So give us a little history on your career trajectory.
It's actually kind of a fun story. It's one of the things that I always talk about is you never know the person who's going to change your life when you meet them. It just happens to be a random thing. I was 20 years old and I was managing a car wash. And we managed to break a car, and the gentleman was not very happy with us. And as a manager, I ended up
break a car.
Break the car. Yeah, we broke the antenna off. We broke the antenna.
Gotcha.
Broke the antenna off the car, and he wasn't very happy. And so I ended up getting to deal with him with that. And it wasn't a pleasant conversation. And then he came back the next day and asked me if I liked my job or not. And I'm thinking, this is the guy who was just cussing me out yesterday. So this is kind of a weird thing to be talking about. And then I said, well, some days are better than others. And he ended up offering me a job to become a sales associate. He was a builder, and he offered me a job as a sales associate. And I explained I didn't have any experience in it. And he said, well, he liked the way that I dealt with him the day before because he was very angry and how I handled the situation. And he offered me a job, and it was kind of a fun negotiation too, because he ended up doubling my income from what I was making as running the car wash, which was a pretty good. It was a pretty good net. So
salesperson from way back when.
Yeah. It started in '89, so it's been a long time. A lot of weekends spent in sales models.
Well, that's how you build your career, right? So '89, you started in the Portland area.
Yes. Yep. And I'd worked my way up. Sales manager, and then was offered the position in Bend to move over as the regional president for the company. And at that point, I was responsible for everything from land acquisition through warranty. 19 direct people reporting to me and hundreds of subcontractors that I was responsible for. There was a lot. That was in 2005.
Okay.
And then there was a little hiccup in the economy in 2008. And that kind of caused all kinds of new plans to come along.
So in 1989, when you got started in the bid, you did start new construction. So
I started for the first 17 years, all I did was new construction.
And then you moved with the same builder over to Bend to start
Yes.
the company over there to help expand the company in Bend. And so take us to Bend. It's now 2005.
So moved to Bend. They were having some issues with the time frames to build, and so kind of with my focus moving there was to increase the sales volume and also shorten the time frames. Because one of the things that a lot of people don't understand with builders is it's very time sensitive. When as the investment side of things, if a builder builds a house and it takes him a year to sell it, he's only making profit one time on that money, regardless of how much the house is that he's building. For example, if he's investing 500,000 into it, and if it takes him a year to build the house and you get it sold and to get it closed, he only makes profit on that 500,000 one time. But if you can build a house in 90 days, then you can, with the same $500,000 investment, you can make a return on that 500,000 three times. So you don't have to make as high as a profit margin if you're making the profit margin three times in any given year, as you do if you're only going to make the profit on that 500,000 one time. So it gives the builder the ability to control their pricing a little bit more by being able to turn the money faster than if it takes them a long time to build a house.
So it sounds like you have really gained a lot of knowledge working this market over the years, and there's some really important components for a realtor if they want new construction to be a market niche. Just listening to you talk about the money, isn't it really all about the money for builders? I mean, it is a for-profit business, right? So
it is, and that's
go ahead.
it's really the best part with it, because with builders, it's not an emotional decision. If they're going to accept an offer, if they're not going to accept an offer, the money works or the money doesn't. And so you don't have to deal with what Aunt Helen thinks or the traditional market. Getting into the traditional market has been fascinating for me because it's a much more emotion-driven business than it is with builders, because the builders aren't emotional at all. Let's just follow the money. If the money works, and you put the deal together and everybody's happy. On the buyer side of it, I always had buyers I was talking with too, but at least I only had one set of emotional people instead of two. And in a traditional deal, both sides tend to make emotional decisions and have other things going on in the decision-making process other than just does it financially make sense.
So what are the advantages for someone, a realtor, to pursue the new home construction market versus the resale market? Why would you go new home construction route? Question one. And then if that is the route you want to pursue, how do you do it?
So the best thing with it by far, you make your own inventory. The way that a lot of builders handle things until you get into the mega builders, if you find them the dirt and bring them the dirt, then you get the list back on the houses. Is the way that it goes a lot of the time, because builders don't really want to spend their time out running around trying to find neighborhoods. So if you can bring a neighborhood, when I bring in a neighborhood to a builder, I've already drawn up how I think that the neighborhood is going to work. So when I bring in the 5 acres, I have a drawing of how I think it will work with how many lots they're going to be able to get out. Another misconception is people think that all 5 acres are created equal, and it's not the case at all. Builders look at land as how many houses do I get to build from it.
So how do you make that assessment? Let's say you find 5 acres for your builder or a builder, and you're doing the preliminary assessment to determine whether that's a good piece of property to bring to your builder. How do you look and say, I can get 20 houses on this parcel at this square footage with this lot size? What do you do on your end before you even get to the builder?
Yeah, so some of the basics on it, you have to understand the basics of development. So if there's a road that you're running parallel to, you're going to end up donating, or the builder developer is going to end up donating typically around 20 feet of frontage to the city for the right of way for the roadway.
Is that pretty standard?
That's pretty standard. That's usually what it's going to end up being, really close to 20 feet. So if you're looking at a parcel and you have a road on 3 sides of it, when you're going to be taking it down, you're losing 20 feet all the way around that property. So you figure out the math on 20 feet by 300 feet on 3 sides, you're losing quite a few lots just in the square footage of the adjoining lots, as opposed to if you're adjoining just one street, now you're only losing 20 feet off of one side instead of 3 or 4 sides. So the number of lots that you're going to be able to get out of that goes up substantially. Also, if you have roads pointing into you, the cities and the counties require this. State require that if you have a road pointing into your neighborhood, you have to connect to that road. So if you have roads coming at you from 4 different directions and you have frontage on 4 sides, you have a lot of roads that you're going to have to build. So the cost of development goes up substantially, as well as the amount of land that you lose for, because you have to pay for the city, the streets, the curbs, the sidewalks, all of that type of stuff, and you lose lot space. So if you have a lot of things coming into it, it gets a lot less expensive.
So you have been doing this long enough, you know these things. So
Mhm.
when you first started doing this, did your builder educate you? Did you have a land use attorney? How did you know, hey, I have this parcel, I better look and see what all the zoning and all the restrictions are, the covenants, all that stuff that's going to be really important to the bottom line for the
I've been blessed throughout my career to have really great mentors and people who were willing to sit down with me. And I ask a lot of questions, just kind of normally in my life. Yeah, I've done it to you quite a few times. I ask a lot of questions, and I've always been blessed that people are willing to sit down with me and have a conversation like you and I are right now, and explain to me how stuff works. What's this different city ordinance that are, and frankly, I've stubbed my toes a whole bunch of times too, of walking in with a plat of what I thought would work that just didn't work. And that's kind of the painful version of finding out that a new rule that got passed or something that changed is that you show up and it kind of end up looking kind of silly because you present something to somebody and you don't know what you're talking about. So the best thing is find somebody who's willing to talk with you, who's done it, and have them teach you.
How do you find your parcels? Because I'm guessing that's a big part of your job is looking for property, land.
Yeah, it is. So a lot of the time, I look at the MLS every single morning. Is how I start my day. The fastest I ever had one, I saw one at 8 o'clock, and we had it under contract by noon. Is the fastest I've ever
It's a
seen
good
one.
day.
And that was a good day. Didn't realize it was going to be that busy of a day, but it got really busy really fast. And that was the fastest one. Also, because I kind of have my niche, and if somebody knows me, it's a lot of what I'm known for, is being on the new construction thing. And I'll have realtors call me before they will list it because they want to make sure that they're not making mistakes. And I'll sit there and I'll do drawings for people of what I think it will become, and let them run with it. And a lot of times, it gives me that 1 day head start to be able to get to one of my builders and talk to them about it and see if we can't put something together right away. But it gives me the opportunity to educate the brokers on the other end of it that all 5 acres are not created equal, and they may look at a closing that just happened that's 5 acres that had no connecting roads and only one road fronting, and I can explain to them and show them what the drawing could have been if it wasn't for the connecting roads and the frontage roads, and show them that the total is really about the total number of lots that the builder developer is going to get out of it, not how much acreage it starts at.
So that brings me to another question. I mean, realtors who list parcels should have a special skill set as well because there's so much information before it even, there should be plenty of information before it even touches your hands. Brent, here's a 5-acre parcel. I've done my homework. You can get 10 houses on here, even with the footage that you have to reserve for roads, blah, 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 blah. So how often do you get a parcel with all the due diligence done ahead of time? Or do you have
Almost
to?
never.
Okay.
Almost never.
So when you get a parcel and you do your assessment and you're looking it over and seeing what makes sense, what pencils out, and you take it to your builder and it looks like it's going to work, when you write an offer, how is it contingent on what's your due diligence look like?
So with most of the developers I work with and most developers, they're going to make it contingent on land use approval. Which when I started selling back in '89, land use approval took about 3 months. They had one a couple of years ago that took 32 months.
32 months?
Yes. Our land use system has become a convoluted mess, frankly. There's far too many chefs in the kitchen, and too many loopholes that you have to try to figure out how to work your way. It's like a bowl of spaghetti and trying to figure out where one of it starts and one of it ends.
So what's the delay? Is it that they're doing work or they keep asking you for additional information? They just can't get to it? Does it depend on the jurisdiction? Why do you go from 3 months to 32? And I'm guessing 30 is on the long end, or is that average? What's average? And why does it take?
Average is probably a year. There's a couple problems. We have to do things that just don't make any sense. If I'm trying to do a really small neighborhood and only create 5 lots, I still have to pay for a traffic impact fee. 5 houses, there's no way that 5 houses is going to be enough to trigger putting in an intersection or putting in, a left turn lane or something. It's 5 lots, but you still have to pay a transportation engineer to do a transportation study. And meanwhile, you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, or the developer, everybody's sitting around waiting and there's not very many transportation engineers. And they don't get paid that much to do a 5 lot neighborhood. So that 5 lot neighborhood gets kicked down the curb while everybody's waiting around to take care. Everyone wants to eat the big elephant first, which makes sense. But it makes it to where the smaller the neighborhood, the harder it is to get the subcontractor base on it to help out. We've now have it to where the builder developer is responsible to have their own engineers look at everything and design it and come up with that. And then the city or the jurisdiction you're in also has their own engineer who verifies that the private engineer did their work properly. And the crazy thing is the private engineer who has liability. So if something's done wrong, it's the private engineer who has liability, but the builder developer gets to pay both engineers to look at the same stuff. So we're paying stuff and wasting time duplicating work.
Does the engineer transportation study happen after the offer is accepted contingent, or does the builder do a lot of this homework sometimes on the front end, or no?
That's where you just don't have anybody doing any preliminary work because most people don't. And until you have a drawing for the neighborhood, you don't know how many lots you're going to get. That's what establishes the transportation study is the total number of trips, which is based off the total number of houses. I know this gets really
step one.
Yeah, so that's step one. When in Oregon, it costs $250 to appeal a land use action. So if you have a neighbor next door who really doesn't want to see the property that's been there for inside the urban growth boundary for decades, they can appeal it for any reason for $250. The builder developer is going to spend thousands of dollars because they must address the appeal and any other potential problems that could roll out of that. So again, now you're paying attorneys and all kinds of people, and the appellant it only costs $250.
How often does that happen? I mean, is that more common? So that's pretty common, that someone is not going to be happy that a builder is going to develop a parcel next to, and that's throughout the state.
Yes. Yeah. Any place inside the urban growth boundary, it's a $250 appeal, and you sit there and spin your wheels while you're waiting to get through the appeal process and get on a docket, and that's how you get to 32 months.
So in what situation would you file once you have an offer on a parcel and you're doing your due diligence? Do things move really quick and smoothly? Are there certain circumstances where it really does go quick and the builder can break ground soon, within a couple months?
No, that doesn't really exist anymore. There's so much stuff now and so many different possible problems that come along with it that there really isn't a normal anymore. It's just so easy to get sideways with somebody. City councils have an enormous portion of it if they're encouraging staff to work on getting neighborhoods approved, or if they're encouraging their land use staff to work on creating bike lanes. You have a limited number of staff hours, and if you have staff working on creating bike lanes, they're not working on neighborhoods. They're not helping alleviate our homeless housing crisis. They're creating bike lanes, and it's the same planners that do the same stuff.
It's a lot of bureaucratic red tape to get even the starting line, really. So
and the cost involved is crazy. And system development charges in different cities can range over $100,000.
So that's a whole separate issue, which we address, which we're trying to. But knowing all these things that you do, because you've been working in the construction market for a long time, and I'm assuming the bureaucratic red tape is, in most jurisdictions, has become more onerous rather than less onerous for builders. What keeps them in the game? I mean, knowing they find a parcel and it could take 12 months to 2 years before they can even excavate?
I have three primary builders that I work with, and I can tell you they all love what they do. They love building homes for people. And I mean, the money is great, but all three of them were around in '08 when the economy had collapsed, and they were bleeding money. It's a rough game. Whenever it always is funny to me because people always talk about how builders and developers are greedy, but builders and developers have cost inputs. And it's common. I mean, everybody's like, "Oh, builders and developers are so greedy," but they have cost inputs. They're the ones paying the system development charges. They're the ones paying for the nails, the screws, the bolts, the everything. And the average housing market trails new construction. So new construction has cost inputs. Your average homeowner has the cost input from when they bought the house originally, and that is all. So when you see a market going up in price, typically it's because of housing costs are going up that are being impacted on the builder. You raise minimum wages, the cost of everything, the corporate activity tax added 1% to individual things, but on your average house, it added a little over 5% in cost. Because on the guy who owned the trees had to pay 1% when he sold the trees. The guy who cut the trees and moved them to the mill had to pay 1%. The mill paid 1%. Lumber pays 1%, and the builder pays 1%. So all the way through, everything that goes into a house went up about 5%. So the builders have to be able to recoup their costs, otherwise they go bankrupt.
Yeah, it's not a charity. That's
Right.
a business. Get it? So
Yeah, absolutely. So they raise their prices 5%, and then the rest of the market follows. And the generic seller, the homeowner seller, makes that 5% profit based off of something that they never paid. And so SDCs as law did not exist until 1993. So anybody who, if their house was built before the whole thing, pay their fair share. Anybody whose house is older than 1993 never paid a dime in system development charges. And yet the builders are paying tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars that anybody with a house before '93 never paid.
So it sounds like it's very challenging to be in the new construction business, both from a builder perspective and a realtor perspective, but rewarding at the same time. So
Yeah.
why, with all these challenges that aren't going to change overnight, particularly in Oregon, why would a realtor want to make new construction a niche market for them? Why would you pursue this area of sales?
So it's kind of, you create your own inventory, and where most of my colleagues get to chase a listing every single time. If I get to eat the elephant, so if I create a neighborhood that's 25 houses, I get the list back on those 25 houses. So I know that I'm going to have those. So I'm elephant hunting. So as opposed to chasing around a whole bunch of deer, and you're trying to eat 25 times, I get an elephant and I get to eat 25 times off the one elephant.
You get a lot. Well, that was a really good hunting analogy. You get a lot. It's killing an elephant versus killing a pheasant.
Yeah.
I hate to be so morbid, but that analogy, I get the analogy. Okay, so it's a lot of work on the front end, but when you get in, you get a lot out of it because you're getting so much rather than makes sense.
Right.
Makes sense. So what are the disadvantages for colleagues?
Weekends. You're sitting a sales model. When you have a neighborhood that's under development, if you're lucky enough to get a builder who will build you a sales model, you're working every weekend. It's you end up figuring out when your days off are, kind of when you can find them, as opposed to you lose a lot of the flexibility that you have in the traditional real estate market. Is by far the biggest negative to it. And a lot on the flip side of it, a lot of the builders of the larger builders, you're pulling a salary also. So you get a salary, and when you get up to that level of the Hayes, the Hortons, the Menards, Polishes, their sales staffs are paying you a salary, so you're an employee, and then you're also getting a commission override over the top.
So if you're doing a 5 parcel subdivision, but you're not going to sit in a sales model, right? I mean, what's the break? How many homes before there's a sales model where you'd have to sit?
Really, it becomes viable at about 20 houses, someplace around in there. And it depends on what type of a profit or what type of a price point you're trying to get to. If you're doing starter homes, which just don't exist in Bend anymore, but if you're doing a starter home market compared to doing a more of a high end market, more likely that you'll see the sales models in a higher end market.
So can you give a real life example? And I know you did a little bit on the 5-acre parcel with the 20-foot setback for the footage. But let's say you find a 5-acre parcel and it's not the super high-end neighborhood, it's not starter home, but maybe it's what's an average lot size now in new construction? 10,000 square feet?
Oh God, I wish.
Oh, so it's much smaller.
It's much smaller. In Bend, the average lot size now is probably about 4,800 square feet, just under 5,000.
Is that based on zoning restrictions, or is that based on what a builder wants to make? Or
So zoning now so it used to be you had to get now you have to have a minimum number of lots per acre. And it's kind of hard for that whole minus 20 feet, minus 20 feet, minus 20 feet. You still have to end up with the certain number of lots out of it. So everybody's backyard that would have been there just got 20 feet smaller. Essentially, is the end result of it. All of the builders I know would much rather be working on larger parcels. When you're on a 4,200 square foot, which is not uncommon to have a 4,000, 4,200 square foot lot, because when you're talking averages, you're going to have some that are bigger and some that are smaller. There's no margin for error on a 4,200 square foot lot. If you pour that foundation and you're off by an inch, you've got a major problem on your hands. You're busting out a foundation to move a house over an inch and set it back down. If you're working on a 7,000 square foot lot, 10,000 square foot lot, you're gonna be off by feet, and it doesn't matter. So everything that you do, even when putting in fence lines, and if you have a neighbor that's in already and his fence is in, and you've got no distance in between, now you're trying to backfill everything by hand. You're trying to do, because you can't use equipment because you're going to wipe out the neighbor's fence. So it gets a lot more difficult, a lot more time consuming, based off of you just don't have space around to turn the bucket on a backhoe. If there's people on both sides of them, you're just stuck.
So your job, and I hate to say, ends when the deal closes and the builder takes the parcel and has his general contractors and project managers. They deal with all that part, right?
Yes.
You're looking for the next parcel after that.
Yep.
Right? Until they're ready to list. Do you usually list? At what point can you list?
So there's actually a science that goes into it, because it depends on with your different lot size. You want to have a variation within the neighborhood. If you only have 3 floor plans for 25 lots, your neighborhood's going to look like crap. If you want to have it to where you look good, you want to have variation in the sizes. If you have enough space to where you can get single stories and 2 stories and master on the main, the more variation that you have within the neighborhood, the more market segments that you're going to be able to sell to, which makes it better for your builder, so that you can turn through them faster, so they can hit that 90 days build time frame, 120 days build time frame, so they can turn the money 3 times. Understanding why the builders want to do stuff in a certain way is a huge portion, because selling houses in any portion of the market is about solving problems. If you can get really good at solving problems, be it for normal homeowners or for builders, solve problems and you'll do extremely well in this industry. If you look for somebody else to solve your problems for you, you're going to have a tough road out.
So when you say solving problems, as you're out looking for parcels for your builders, you're trying to do as much of this problem solving on the front end. So when you take it to them, here's a great parcel. I've done A, B, and C. This is why it would work. This is how many houses you could get out of this parcel. So you've done as much as you can, knowing you still have to get approval.
Yeah, and it's like when I take it to them, I have what floor plans I want to be building, the square footages, what the CMA shows that I'll be able to sell those houses for in today's money. So everything's in today's money. So you never know if it's going to be a 6-month project to get to building streets, or if it's going to be a 3-year project to get in streets. So you don't even bother trying to say, well, in the market, I think 3 years from now, because you just don't know when the neighborhood's going to come around. So you always talk in today's market for them about, well, I want to be able to build an 1,800 square foot single story on these 6 lots, and on these, and they're all intersprinkled. And so sometimes you'll intentionally draw the lots to where they're different widths, so that you can do different things on it. We have one that we're doing right now that we built it wide enough, the lot wide enough to where we get an RV garage. So because there's not a lot of them in the market, and trying to hit market segments where people aren't doing all the same thing. I spend a lot of time going around to the other builders and developers, or the other builders, and seeing what their end product is, and where they are at in the market, and then try to design the other neighborhood that we're going to do, to where we're building either sizes or types of houses that the other builders are not, and get to a portion of the market where there's a gap.
So how often over the years that you've been doing new construction, subdivision is built out, all the homes are sold, do you keep in touch with the buyers? Do you ever do any resales within the neighborhood?
I don't. I don't have a CMA that I chase of all the people that we've worked with or stuff. I have had several people that I've built for a second time or a third time. I have a lot of people that I've built for their brother, their sister, their mom, their dad. I think the biggest I had a neighborhood in Tiger that I had 8 people from one family that all bought in the same neighborhood within each other. It's like, I thought it was going to be really kind of odd situation for people who weren't related to them, but worked out okay.
Good. So finding a parcel, if you're advising a fellow colleague, realtor, about getting into the new construction biz, say look for parcels. Once you find a parcel, how do you identify what builders to go to? If you don't have the relationship like you do, if you're just getting started, what's the next step?
So get involved with the local builders association, wherever it is that your market is. Everybody has a local builders association, and there's the state builders association. Get involved. They have a marketing committee within the state association. It'll vary depending on the local one. And get involved with the association. That's where you're going to meet builders in a comfortable environment. Because if you just show up and they've never heard of you, they don't know who you are, nobody who they know knows who you are, they're not going to give you the time of day.
So you have to build your credibility. Attend meetings, network like you do on resale. Any should be doing this. Okay, so that's where you would start. Build your relationships, and if you get lucky, you find a parcel and a builder who's willing to bite.
Yeah. And it's, when you do have a client when you have a buyer, show them new construction. It is amazing to me how many people are somehow, for some reason, afraid of selling new construction. It completely makes sense. Everything that is more than 10 years old, the furnace, the gas stove, the water heater are all on their desk door. And you can do a Google search of what life expectancy is for a furnace. And for a hot water heater, and for all of them tend to time out at 10 years. So if you're selling your client a 12-year-old house and it doesn't have any new things in it, you're selling them a house that they're about to spend $50,000 replacing the furnace, replacing all of the things that are going to die, because that's what things do. New home construction. Oh yeah, everything.
The minute you close, your roof collapses.
Yeah.
The inspection said it was fine. So let me ask you another question. Is there a difference, or what is of course there's a difference. What is the difference from your role working with a custom builder versus a spec home builder, from your knowledge perspective and what you come to the table with? Does that change depending on the builder's market niche?
It does, because custom builders aren't going to be taking down a neighborhood. They'll be looking for an individual lot that they're going to build on. And to build those relationships too, you need to be able to have the conversation. We're talking right now all the time about buyers brokers agreements, and being able to have those conversations about how you get paid. In a custom home, if you are comfortable talking about how you're going to be compensated for your time, the custom builder will pay you compensation just the same way as a production builder will. And it just becomes a line item on the breakdown,
Just one home versus a spec neighborhood of 20 homes. I have a lot. Joe Builder, Susie Builder, or you might be interested in putting a custom on this lot. You go through the same analysis you would on a neighborhood.
Yep.
With one.
And whoever develop a relationship with, most of the areas have some version of, across Oregon, have some version of a builder show every summer. Go through those houses, figure out the builder that you like, talk to the representative. Most of the time, it's the actual builder who's standing there talking to you. Build a relationship with them. Talk to them about, hey, if I have a client who's interested in building a home and I refer them to you, are you willing to compensate me for the referral? Just ask them. If they say yes, fantastic. You now have a client. If they say no, then go on to the next builder. And it's like build that relationship with them. And then when you have somebody who is looking to build something, if it's outside, if they're looking for building on property, most of the time there's no builder who does production on 2.5 acres. There just isn't. So if you have a client who's looking for 2.5 acres, you're either stuck selling them a house that the furnace, the water heater, and everything's about to go bad on, or you can find them 2.5 acre home site, sell them that, and take them to a builder that you've already had the conversation with. Are they willing to compensate you? And you get them together, and it works out great for everybody. Your client gets to work with a builder who that you have been through their houses, you've talked with them, you've gotten to know them, you've had dinner, and they do a great job and they care about their homeowners. Now you're of value to your client who wants to buy and build a custom home. It's all about building relationships with people and knowing.
Starting out, it's like anything. Network. Build your base and work it and see how that's where you would start. So after you have let's say you have your builders, you've gone to a couple events, you've established some relationships, someone's willing to take a chance. Until you can bring a parcel to them, they're just looking for the land. And so there could be 5 realtors across the state looking for land for them, and they're going to sign with whoever brings them the property, and it pencils out.
Yep. Yeah, and you build it then too, because when you take something to the builder and tell them, hey, let's build these 20 houses together. Here's the houses I want to build, and I think we're going to be successful on it. It's there inherent on you that you need to work harder than anybody else to make sure that you deliver on what it is. One thing I talk about all the time is I will outwork the guy next to me, next to me. And when I have a neighborhood, I just pretty much work. That's what I do. And then when I'm done with a neighborhood, I eat off the proceeds of the elephant for a while I try to find another one. And so it's like there's times where I'm working 80 hours weeks, and there's times when I'm working 10-hour weeks, long enough to wake up in the morning and look at the MLS and see what's coming up for land. And if you end up with something getting delayed, it's a different beast than it is in traditional real estate for sure.
Drive around and just look for property.
Yep. I've door knocked people. Usually when I get into a neighborhood, if once I have a builder developer who, if you have like 4 parcels all around each other that are 5 acres, if this one's for sale and I get that one put together, I'll door knock the other 3 to see if they're interested in moving, and just have the conversation with them about, hey, I know what my builder's willing to pay per acre with how many we're getting, and just do a drawing for their neighborhood or their parcel real quick, go over door knocking. Hey, you got a pretty good idea. This is what my builder will pay for this. Are you guys interested in moving?
So
in today's market, if you want to retire.
So it's a lot of work. The reward is good, but you have to be committed to the process because it's not a quick turn.
No, there are no quick turns in the new construction niche. There aren't.
So
no easy money.
Given the market condition, which is really just an opportunity. I mean, I know there's more challenging times than others. Do you recommend that, colleagues? Would you recommend to anyone?
I absolutely love it. You have to be willing to do the work. Is the hardest thing. If we have some people who get into being a realtor because it provides a lot of free time, and you can have a lot of control over your hours. New construction is not the right niche. You end up with it's very rewarding, but you do end up with a lot of hours. If you have a sales model that there's just nobody coming in for Super Bowl Sunday, um, you're hanging out. I've watched a lot of Super Bowls sitting in a sales model.
It's good quiet time.
It is. It's good.
But it gives you an opportunity to prospect and figure out your next and do some research and what's next.
Well, exactly. And to read up on what your city council is looking at doing, what changes they're thinking they're going to make. And I don't think city councils are evil. I just think there's a lot of unintended consequences in the world, and they think that they're doing something really, really good. And if there isn't somebody on the other side of it saying, "Here's the yin to the yang," they're trying to yin, but there's a yang to absolutely every single thing that somebody wants to do.
Like everything.
Somebody needs to be there saying, "Hey, there's an unintended consequence to what you guys are thinking about doing. This is what the unintended consequence is." So those dead times when you're sitting in the sales model is a great opportunity to read through those things, read through the different stuff that's coming up and be ahead of it so that you do have an opportunity to go and testify. I think every single one of us should be super involved with our city councils and our county commissions.
So you work the bed market for new construction, your builders there. Do you work other markets outside of Deschutes County?
I did a couple in Prineville, but essentially no. It's the kind of the area around here: Sisters, Lapine, Redmond, Prineville, and Bentwood, predominantly in Bend.
So what if you found a parcel in Medford? Would you?
I get a hold of one of the brokers that I've met through my time with the Oregon Realtors that I know at least has a basic background in new construction. And
you even take that to your builder. Yeah. Got it. You would just.
I don't know the players. I don't know the players. I don't know the city of Medford's rules because a lot of the rules vary from city to city to city. And you develop credibility. If I want to call the city manager in Bend, I can, and he'll take the phone call. But I've earned that that ability by serving on city commissions and various committees and stuff where I've earned that ability to make those phone calls.
Which is why it's very risky to work outside your market because rules change in different jurisdictions.
Yep. Well, and you're not doing the right thing for your client. I would much rather refer something to one of my friends from Oregon Realtors and let them be the expert in their area. I know state law, but I do not know the rules of Medford or even Portland anymore.
As you reflect on your career, would you change anything?
I don't. I really wouldn't. I've been so blessed. I've known so many really great people. People ask me why I so freely share information all the time. And anybody can call me that wants to. I'll talk to anybody. Because I had so many just great mentors and great friends that helped me. I wasn't born knowing the stuff I know. And I got to where I am by people being willing to talk to me and being willing to help me with really nothing guaranteed coming back the other direction. And it's not when I help other people, it's not that I'm trying to help in a weird way. It's not that I'm trying to help them. It's the only way that I can pay back the people who helped me is to pay their kindness that they showed to me, to pay that kindness forward. Is the way that I thank them, because there's a few of them that are dead now, they're gone, and I can't call them.
What you did?
I know, and tell them thank you or anything like that. So this is the way for me that I pay back the people who helped me during my career.
You give it out in slices, it comes back in loaves.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great saying.
So I like that one too. It makes sense.
I'm gonna steal it.
Metaphor. So Brent. I know there's a lot of steps involved if someone wants to work the new construction market, but it sounds like for novices, start networking, get involved, know your builders, know your community, know your city council, know your land use laws. Just become well informed on what, and then the rest you'll go to step 2.
Well, and to understand when you're writing that first offer for new construction, when you have you've got the buyer client, understand the motivations of the builders. Talk to their sales staff and ask them about what their builder's looking for. Builders can't cut price on a house because they're impacting the appraisal value of every one of their clients who are already living in the neighborhood. They're cutting their own throat on every house that's going to come after that one. Yet we see offers come in all the time where it's like, oh, I want you to cut your price by 20,000. Never going to be accepted, ever.
So what percentage should a buyer, where could a buyer negotiate?
So ask for blinds. Ask for a refrigerator. Even if you think it needs to be a $20,000 swing, ask for blinds, a washer and dryer, refrigerator, and air conditioning if it's not included already. Ask for stuff because for the appraisers, for the CMA, for everybody else who's looking at value, it just disappears from the deal. Your client is still getting the $20,000 value if that's what the market is dictating, but the builder's not cutting the throat of the people who are already living in the neighborhood, nor the people who are going to be living in the neighborhood after that. It's such a common mistake that we see. It's probably a third of the offers in a declining market or in a tough market that you'll see are written taking value, and the builder can't accept it. He can't. But if you write it as stuff, you'll get the end of the day, your client is getting the same deal, and you're the hero, but you're not. The builder looks at it and goes, "That's a great offer." And if I need to be looking for somebody to staff my sales model, who is it who understood, who solved my problems while solving their clients' problems at the same time? And builders keep track of that stuff. Nobody thinks they do. It's so funny the way that people look at builders. If they know that you know how to solve their problems because of the way you wrote an offer, that makes sense that that's going to be who they want to have helping them run their business. It's not
really good guidance. That is a really good tip. All right, Brent, I have one more question for you. Then I'd like you to wrap it up with any parting comments, helpful tips that you want our listeners to hear. Many builders have their own sale agreements.
Mhm.
Is there room to negotiate on bringing it on a different sale agreement? Because no. Okay. So that's where a buyer's agent should be creative. Read the builder's contract. If your buyer wants that property, figure out how to make it work with the contract the builder wants to use.
Yes. And most builders come off of one of the two forms. They usually either use Oregon Realtor forms or forms, and then they'll have an addendum to it. There's a lot of things that I like the Oregon Realtor forms better because they are more middle of the road for builder and for client. They're a better form for the negotiation. You're going to have less stuff that needs to be put into the contract. The builder's going to counter your offer just because of things that are written into a standard contract. I'm getting way into the weeds here, but or if it requires that builder pay for the reinspection by an appraisal. So if the appraiser comes out and says the blinds weren't installed yet, so I'm not going to sign off on the house being complete. And so then the builder is going to have to pay the appraiser to come back out to reinspect.
With the exception of price, everything's negotiable, basically.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good to know. What's your final parting tip to anyone who is interested in pursuing this market niche?
It's an absolute blast. You get to know your client. Do you know what your client will take? Any time that I'm getting an offer, I can tell you going through the door if the offer is going to deliver or not, because I know my builders very well, and I know what they're willing to accept and what they're not willing to accept. And I try to advise brokers when they're writing those offers that I'm legally required to present this. I'm going to, but it's going to get rejected. And I'll have stuff that I know that the builder won't even bother to counter because the offer is written so badly. And it happens all the time. Probably once every 2 months, somebody will write an offer that's so bad that the builder will just ignore it.
So it really helps on the buyer's end for their agent to be well educated. They may not list new construction like you do, but if you're bringing a buyer to the table, you should really understand your seller. Same way you would in a resale. You should understand your builder and how to make it work for your buyer if they really want that house.
Well, and talk to the buyers or the broker, the builder's representative. They are there to answer questions. That's the entire purpose of sitting in the sales model all the time, is so that you're there when people come through. Don't treat them like the enemy. They know what their builder can do. They know what their builder can't do or won't do. Uh, if you want to have the garage floor painted, does that builder even have access to a subcontractor who does that work? Yeah, so you don't want to write something into a contract, and by the way you write the contract saying, okay, I want you to go find a new subcontractor that you don't currently have because I think it would be cool to have my garage floor painted. That's the type of stuff. Ask that question of the sales staff so you know whether or not the builder has it. Because if the builder doesn't have that subcontractor in his back pocket already, your offer is going to get countered at best, rejected at worst, and you end up looking stupid in front of your own client because you didn't take the time to ask if they have a subcontractor in their pool of subcontractors that will do the thing that you're asking for.
That is great advice. That is the most helpful tip of this whole podcast. Know your builder, know what your buyer wants, ask ahead of time so you have a better shot of getting the first offer accepted.
Yep.
Love it. That's an excellent tip. Thank you, Brent. It's really impressive to see how well you've done in this market. You started from ground zero and you built it to a very impressive business in new construction. So thank you for sharing your wealth and wisdom with our
You betcha.
today.
Thank you very much. Who would have thought when I was running a car wash that it'd end up where it did?
Who knew? Who knew? But I love that story. Thank you for sharing, Brent.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Thank you for your time.
You bet. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Bye. Goodbye, listeners. See you next time. Well, you'll see me next time.